In this video, I want to teach you how to build full stack applications, full stack web applications using Cursor AI. And in this video, you're not just going to learn on how to ask the AI certain things and what's the best prompt to use. I'm going to attempt to teach you development, the basics and fundamentals of development, and actually explain you how the things work that the AI will set up for you. So let's take a look at this. So as you can see, this is a very narrowed down version of an application, a web application architecture. We have the front end here and we have the back end. So in this example here, when we're going to set things up in this video, the back end part will be hosted with Supabase. This will be the back end, the database where the back end server logic of our application is being stored and will run on. Now, why do we need a backend? Because this is the front end here. We have the UI, we have the router, we have the logic, we have network requests, we have state. We may not know what they are, but that seems to be fine, right? But here's the thing. When you're building an application that is used by more than one user, you would ultimately want to store user data somewhere so other users can retrieve data and users can keep their data. Their data isn't lost if they change devices, if they have a new computer, right? Or if they log out, you don't want the data to be lost. So you need as data storage on a back-end server that is going to keep this data safe and sound. So what you need is a database. That is the data component of the backend that every application should need. Now, also on the backend, you have logic. Now, why the heck do we need logic? We can just connect the database directly to the front end. What the heck are you talking about? Now, hear me out. Now, let's say users are doing specific inputs, right? Let's say you build an AI chatbot application or you build an AI to do looks maxing, or you build an AI to count your calories. There's so many interesting AI apps out there. So you build an AI app and it does something very unique and proprietary. You would want a custom engine to follow a specific workflow to get to a result. Let's say maybe the user says, I don't know, make a AI movie, for example. Okay, now there are a couple of steps in that process, right? You may need to first create a text, then images, and then videos. That has to be a process. That has to be a funnel. You need to have something, some robot saying, okay, let's first generate the text, take the text, generate the images, take the images, generate the video, right? Most of the applications that you're using out there, they're not to-do lists. They have some sort of workflow, some sort of logic on the back end. And this is the logic part. That's what we call in development APIs. Those are application programming interfaces. You can forget about the name. It doesn't matter what it's called. You just need to hear it one more time so that you know, oh, OpenAI has an API. Oh, so they are running stuff on their backend and I can plug into that as well. So just mesmerize the name. We'll just call it logic in this video for simplification. But those are the automations. Those are the workflows that are being, that are running on your backend to make the application useful. Because storing data is great, but you also need to get data into the database, which will likely happen through an API. And before you get the data in the database to have it then be retrieved by an API, ultimately, you need to process the data. You need to work with the data. You need to accumulate data, whatever. And we're going to use logic workflows on our backend to do this. So those things all run while the user's application is off, while the phone is off, while the computer is off, because they run on our own server, on our own computer that we host ourselves, in this example with Supabase, that is running and handling all of that. Now, there's another part of the backend that is actually hosting the front end, because the front end has to be served on a domain. And ultimately, for people to access the interface, for people to access the front end, you need to host it on a server, which is a backend. That is a server that is retrieving information, retrieving files, and sending a bunch of files to a to the user, which then gets rendered in the browser as an application, right? So for that, we're going to use Netlify. They have a very generous free tier, same as Supabase. So now they're connecting to each other and they're communicating, right? Now, the UI, the interface, the web application, the front-end part is a little bit of a layer situation if you're working with major frameworks such as React, Vue, and all of the other ones. You will have your UI, that's what the user sees. That's the elements, that's the buttons, that's the text, that's all of the kind of stuff happening in your application. Right? And then you have the router, which most of the times is bound to its own state. State are variables. What are variables? Variables are kind of like, think of them like little data buckets that store pieces of data, very small ones or sometimes big ones. And this data is being stored across components and across sessions on the application sometimes, so that component A knows the input value of component B. Or in the router situation, you can switch between pages. So let's say you're on a page, create account, right? And then you create your account and you go to a different page, login or dashboard. You will still know who's logged in because their state moved across sessions, and you have this routing or pages. Now, the way a normal application would work, let's draw this a little bit here. The way a normal application would work, that's not React, that's not Vue, is it would be a multi-page application. So let's do multi-page application. So you have multiple static pages, multiple code files, if you will, that will get served. There is a file for the About Us page, there's a file for the home page, a file for every page. Now, what is very popular, and you get like great speed from building them, those are single page applications, SPAs or SPAs. Those SPAs, they are, they're very fast because they only load one page. So a SPA works a little bit like this. You have one big page. Let's make it big because it's a big page. You have one big page here, and then in this one big page, you have multiple fake pages. They're not real pages. So you have multiple fake pages, and based on the path, based on the link that you are on, it'll hide this page and show this page, or show this page and hide those two pages. So it's faking pages, which sometimes is not really good for SEO, to be honest, because React applications are not made for good SEO because they run through JavaScript because of this entire situation happening here. But that's not something we have to worry about yet. We're building an application, a dashboard, so SEO is not too important yet. But there are solutions like Next.js that give us kind of like a combination of both static page rendering, but then also, once the page was loaded for the initial load, you can switch between other pages in a single page application style. But this is not something we need to know yet. So we have the single page application. So we have one page with multiple fake pages in there. They're not real pages. And this is what we're doing in this video. And this is the routing. Moving between those pages is incredibly complex sometimes, right? So you need a framework that manages those routes from this page to this page, from this page to this page, from this page to this page. You get the idea. That is what a router would do. The most popular one for React would be something called React Router. So that's just something to consider, but we can get rid of all of that. That is not important anymore. So now let's take a look at the architecture and all of that again here. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Okay, perfect. So now we have the router. Now we know kind of like what a router is. Not fully, but I think we know enough about it. Then we have the logic, because, well, there's logic running on the back end. When the user clicks on a button, we need to call the logic on the back end eventually to do something. So when we have logic on our front end here, there are kind of like little variables that store data, like a user input. Let's say you have a form where the user puts in a prompt. You're building an AI chatbot, and they say, make an image of a dog eating a hot dog, right? Okay. And then you would have a variable called user prompt, for example, that would store the user input. right? So you can then take this variable data and send it to the backend. So think of it like a folder. You have a folder on the front end that catches all the user inputs, and then you send that folder like a Dropbox link to the backend. The backend opens the folder, gets the data that's in the folder, and then sends that to ChatGPT, processes it, and returns it back. So that would be state, that would be variables, a very simplified and highly abstracted explanation, but ultimately that's what they do, that's how they work, that's kind of like how you can visualize what's going on with them. Then ultimately you have the network because your front end can connect to your back end. So your front end can pull data from your back end, such as prices, menus for a restaurant, whatever, and it can send data to the backend, right? With sometimes including state. So this is something that would probably be done in React with React hooks and all that kind of stuff, use effect for certain things, or JavaScript, which will probably use React and JavaScript and TypeScript, possibly a mix of all of them. But ultimately, the entire front-end part here, while we're using React, Tailwind CSS, ChatCN UI for the interface as an example, all of that ultimately, because all of those frameworks abstractions don't really exist, they all get compiled in our local development tool to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Because the only thing that can run in a browser is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, people will say, what about WebAssembly? We're just going to skip that because it's going to make this entire thing too complicated, and it's already complicated. So the only thing a browser can run is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And all of this here, it probably doesn't contain any of those because we're using React, we're using frameworks, we're using high abstractions. The tools ChatCN UI, Tailwind CSS, React Router, and React, they're made for developers to work easier with development and to have an easier solution compared to writing vanilla JavaScript itself, which if you just write pure blank JavaScript, we call that vanilla JavaScript, right? So this is why those frameworks exist. They abstract JavaScript to make it simpler to write, and most of the internet is based on React, so AI is really good at it. JSX in particular, that's the scripting language behind React. So this is something to consider, and it will be compiled to a static folder that just renders JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And then we can host that static folder with Netlify, which is a static hosting company. Okay, and then the backend ultimately will be dynamically hosted by Supabase. So now that we got this entire thing somewhat understandable here, let's start by setting up the project. So I'm going to go into Cursor and we're going to open the project, and everything ultimately will be hosted by GitHub, but we'll look into that right now. Let's create a new folder. Let's call it new app video, and let's create this and let's open this folder. Now we are in Cursor and we can now, start setting up the application here. So let's say create a ChatCN UI web app using React and Tailwind version 4. Okay, and then I'm going to say something. Let's say in case we do not have added Node.js and anything else really that we need to develop locally, please install everything we need. So because you're doing local development, you need Node.js on your computer. Now you can just put this prompt in here in case we do not have added Node.js and anything else really that we need to develop locally. Please install everything we need. The AI is going to, send everything up for you so you don't have to worry about it. Let's send this here. So now it's creating and setting up the application, which is very simple. And now, as you can see, it's running those commands. If they do not auto-run, just, always click on allow list, and then it's just going to be able to execute those for you. Now, if it's set up correctly, it should all run in the sandbox and it should be secure, so you shouldn't be too worried about installing and running those commands on your computer. But it's always good to have backups on GitHub though. So now it's going to install the application. This can take a little bit to get everything set up. And in the meantime, we can already make sure that we have a Netlify account, that we have a GitHub account, and all that kind of stuff. And the nice thing is about ChatCN UI, it looks really beautiful. It works well for mobile application, well for web applications. So you can customize the theme. You can really make it look great. And it just really looks nice. It looks very clean. Like, look at all this kind of stuff. Very nice framework system. Look at those switches. Very, very clean. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Record audio. Look at this. And you got like the credit card input form. You have like dashboards, like with beautiful charts that they support. So you got everything here really that you need in one UI system. Looks really great. There you go. What else would you want more? Look at the smilet. Red, neutral, green, stunning. Look at this. You got drag and drop lists. So you got essentially everything you would need to build a dashboard, an application, a SaaS, or even a mobile application with tools like Despi that lets you turn your web application into a surprisingly performant mobile application with all native features. So now let's go back into Cursor here. Let's just keep allowing those commands here to make sure that everything is set up correctly and nicely. So now in here, we're just going to allow everything that needs to be configured. So now it will create a starter application, and then we're already going to deploy the starter application to, Netlify for static hosting. And then I'm also going to show you how you can develop those things locally and how you can test certain things locally. So now we're planning the next moves, and it's setting up all those files, as you can see, and, really very convenient experience. So, like if you've used some of the web-based tools, they do really charge quite of an upcharge. Consider moving to local development. You're not really missing much features, and they do give you a lot of flexibility, and they give you more ways to manage context efficiently. So, maybe something to look into. So again, as you can see, it's working as any web-based tool. It's setting up all the files, creating those projects. You can see how the files are being added. And it's a very nice, convenient experience. And you can, take a look at the tasks that are now happening. This will take a little bit. So let's just make a cut. I'll always allow every command that it does, and then we'll take a look at it once it's done. So now Cursor finished building the application. So let's ask it, can you deploy it locally for testing? Because our computer technically is a server. So it can deploy the application to our computer that is also a server, so we can load the application locally into our computer from our computer. So now it's setting this up. It's setting this up on localhost. That is the local server that you can use to run those things and test those things. And now, as you can see, there are some errors. That's completely fine. So let's copy those errors. And now something's happening. No, still errors. Let's copy that, and let's go back into Cursor. Just allow. Okay. Now I'm going to tell Cursor following: open it in the browser in Cursor, because you can also open it in here. And then I'm just going to. I can't do that. I can't select it anymore. Okay, let's just tell it that then. Let's see if it can do this for us. Let's run. Oh, no, wrong server. Didn't deploy it correctly. It's an old project. Okay. Let's say I think it was not successfully deployed. I think it was not successfully deployed. I'm also going to paste this inside of here. I think there was a build error. That's why it's still opening something old. But let's see. I'm also going to chew this and send this error that I copied inside of here. Whenever you see errors like this in here, just copy the entire thing, paste it into Cursor, because it will tell it exactly in here where those errors are, in what files, on what lines, and it will then be able to resolve that with the magic of AI. So as you can see, fixing a compatibility issue with Tailwind CSS version 4. So there was an issue with a plugin. Now pasting that in gave it enough context to resolve this. So we'll be able to then, after this was rebuilt, refresh this, and we'll see what's going on here and if it's working. Also, we do, still not fully working. So let's take a look at this. So still not working. Let's go into Cursor and still editing files. Now, I'm kind of like in a, it's still doing stuff. Server is running. Post may still not be compatible. Let's open the browser in Cursor. And while we're on it, let's copy this and let's open this in Cursor. So Cursor in here gets a little bit more access to the errors that are happening, if that makes sense, right? So now it's still editing, and this will take a little bit. So now it's updating some CSS variables for Tailwind, and it's debugging the problem, essentially. That was the problem that is, being fixed in here. That was the error. And now, as you can see, this application is beautifully working. So now we have our application deployed to localhost. How great is that? So now from localhost, this is a static web page, right? We can now deploy it to GitHub. And this is where we would host this to version control it. So let's just run this. And it still goes to the wrong server because it's on the wrong localhost, but it's fine. Let's tell it it's localhost. Let's just paste the correct one so it knows which one is. It's going to the wrong server, which it should be this one, 8.2, but it's going to 7.4, which is another project I have. That's fun. It's localhost. So this is fine. I'm just going to give it the context. Now we want to connect with GitHub. So please create a GitHub account where you can host all your crazy stuff on. And then we're going to get this all nicely set up here. So now we are going to go back into Cursor. And it's still planning the next move. So let's just already prepare the next prompt. Let's say connect with a new GitHub account using the login device number flow. This is the easiest way to log in. Let's run this. And now it opens the correct one. So this is great. So now we deployed our first application locally in less than 20 minutes. It wasn't that complicated, right? So now connect with a new GitHub account using the login device number flow. Just tell it this, it will know what to do. This is the easiest way to connect GitHub with your cursor without having to go all crazy and go all local and you can use all the complicated stuff. So now it's just using the GitHub CLI to simply set this up. It's going to install everything that it needs. So if you still need to approve some stuff, just approve those and it will nicely take care of all of them. So now, as you can see, I think we're on the wrong link here because this link works. Let's see. We'll look into that later. Maybe something is cached. Yeah, there you go. Now it works. Look at that. Beautiful. So now you see this command says open this URL to continue in your web browser. So we're going to copy this link here and we'll go into our web browser and we'll paste this in here. It's github.com/login/device. Okay, and now we'll select our GitHub account and now we will get a link. So as you can see, first copy your one-time code. So we'll copy this code here that Cursor gave us, and we'll be pasting this code into GitHub here. So now they link because this code is kind of like a one-time password. So we'll just authorize it. Now log in here. Okay, and now we are logged in, so we can close this. So now, as you can see, the account is successfully created, and it's successfully linked. It was created before, not created, but it's now successfully linked. And for everybody saying, you know what, I don't like local development because I can't preview the application and select specific elements, you know, you don't have any excuses anymore. Look at this. I can click on this particular box here and select it. I can say, no, edit this heading. And all of that kind of stuff is just like lovable. It's just like the other ones. You just most of the times get a way better deal when it comes to those things. So really cool. You can go in here, select the button, say edit this button. So really powerful. And then, you know, you have the development tools for the consoles and more advanced development tools really already available to you right inside of here. So very powerful stuff. You got the security tab, the application tab. You can see memory, performance, network, sources, console. You can inspect the HTML, see what's happening here. You can test in a mobile preview here and really test it nicely, responsively on all breakpoints to make sure it works great on all screens. So very powerful stuff that you could do. So highly suggest you taking a look at building those, you know, local applications. So open this browser and continue. Let's say we already did. I think maybe me clicking on all of those things kind of like broke it. Let's say we already did take a look at the chat history. And just cancel this one, and then we'll send this. And I apologize for the typo on chat history, but we already did take a look at the chat history. So sometimes you do something, like we already have here, and currently logged in as Despian native, then authenticating with a new device. We already are logged in, so sometimes it tries to go back to it, but we're already in there, so we do not need to worry about this anymore. So now let's just wait till it is done with planning the next moves here. No, let's tell it, stop. We already logged in successfully. What do you not get? Okay, now I'm going to send this. Now it says, as you can see, stop. We already not logged in. We already logged in successfully. What do you not get? So we'll see what the AI has to say about that. Because we're already in, it tries to bring us in again. You know, it doesn't need to do that. You're not logged in. So it did log us in. It didn't store that we're logged in. Oh, that's great. So now we have to do it again. Do it again. Maybe we waited a little bit too long. We shouldn't have touched stuff while it did the login process. Sometimes it's a little bit fiddly. So we'll try this again, and it should work. Okay, so we'll copy this link, and we'll get this code here. You know, practice makes perfect. That's what they say. So we'll go on continue, and we'll now go on cursor, and we'll copy the code here that we get, and we'll paste this in here, and we'll go on continue. We'll authorize GitHub, and now we're all set. So let's just keep this page open for now. Now logged in as Despian native. That's me. Authentication complete. Don't touch anything. There you go. So now it's planning the next moves. So we should be able now to take a look at this. Perfect. So we are logged in. So let's say create a new repo for this project, right? Okay, create a new repository for this project. So we can store this project on GitHub and host it so we're not losing our progress when we change computers or something happens or the computer gets stolen or whatever. So we always have a backup for it, right? And we can then also host it on the cloud. So now it's creating the application here in GitHub, and then we will have it all two-way synced, which is very nice. So now, as you can see, it's planning the next moves. Now it's still planning the next moves, which will take a little bit. But we should now see this happening on GitHub. So it will give us the link. And now we can open this link. Okay, and now as you can see, we have our application here, new app video. And now it's on our GitHub. So now we got everything back up and everything synced and everything going on. Now we want to host this. So we go to Netlify and create an account or log in. And now in Netlify, it's incredibly simple. You go to your projects, you go to add new project, import an existing project, go to GitHub, and then you continue with the same GitHub account. Now you're logged in, that's it. Now you will see all your projects. You will look for the appropriate one, new app video. And then inside of here, I think I need to, I think we're good. Your plan limit, I think I can just do this time. Let's see, deploy new app video. Okay, perfect. Now it's being deployed and built. I do have a little bit of a few projects on there. But now what it does is it builds the application to be a distribution folder. We also have some AI features in here. I don't find them too helpful though, but it's fine. And now as you can see, we have the application now hosted on this web link that can be opened from anywhere. So I can go into Safari, which in a different browser, and I can access this website through this URL. And there you go. So now we have everything nicely set up here. And then we can host this, we can share this with people. We can, go to domain management here and link it with a custom domain, like buy a new domain. We could put our, domain name in there and then link it with the project. That's very simple to do. But for now, we're just going to keep it as is. Okay. Now on this project here, we want to now connect it to a backend so we can have authentication, have login, have all of that kind of stuff set up here. So our backend of choice will be Supabase. And Supabase has something really cool, the Model Context Protocol. So let's just duplicate this tab here and let's go to the dashboard of Supabase. And I'm just going to create a new project in Supabase. And I'm going to give it a project name. Video app, okay. Database password. I just generate a password and I'll copy that and just put it in a browser tab for now. Okay. And now I'm going to probably select Asia Pacific because that's where I am. But if again, choose the zone based on your users. Let's create a new project. And now we're in. So now we have this video app here. So now we need to integrate with Cursor. And it's very simple. Now we can go to this page here, supabase.com/docs/guides/getting-started/MCP. You have this Model Context Protocol setup tool. So in here, you can just select hosted project. You will select your app, in my example, a video app, right? And then I will do allow access to everything on the account, debugging, developments, functions, branching, storage, right? And now I have this MCP here. Now I'm going to select my client. You can take, whatever you want. I use Cursor. And now just in one click, I can go on Add to Cursor, open Cursor. And now, as you can see, I can just paste my Supabase MCP inside of here for the integration. So like Cursor can set up this entire thing with Supabase and Cloud Functions and backend as simple as you would do in Lovable. So now let's install this. I have some other ones. Let's just delete the other ones that I'm not using. Let's connect. Okay, now let's open this. We need to click on connect again because now we need to log into Supabase. So let's open. And now this MCP will ask you to authorize access. So let's authorize Cursor and let's open Cursor. And now we have authorized Supabase to have access to our projects. And now as you can see, we got all those tools here that will allow us to build our backend. So now I can go inside of here and let's say, build a simple app with a start page, off page, and protected gated page only for logged in users. Let's send this. Now it's setting up the entire backend because it can use the Supabase MCP for that, which will allow us to create edge functions and databases and read and understand how everything is set up. So now it's creating the entire thing here. And now it's building the authentication, protected routes, and all that kind of stuff. Now, it will probably start with the front-end part of this state-driven application first, and then ask us which backend we want to use. We'll then tell it to use Supabase, which will then probably have it take a look at the Supabase MCP to, set up those stuff on the backend as well, and not just the front end. So, as you can see, local development is really getting easy, and there you go. I think we're good. Because it already connected it. Okay, and they make it really simple connecting with the MCP. It's a very nice experience, and then Supabase will ultimately give you the most amount of freedom because that's your backend, and it's way better than having Laughable Cloud because you own your backend, you have access to it here. It doesn't go through a middleman, right? So you have the most amount of custom functions. You can just open the assistant here, create a custom edge function as you want, select your model. So it's really powerful what you can do with it. You can open the editor directly here to create edge functions. You can open the SQL editor. You can manage your storage, your buckets, vector storage, observability. You have all the integrations that are pre-made, like cron jobs. They have a Stripe wrapper to make payments. OAuth, they have all that kind of stuff available here, making it really simple to integrate this kind of stuff. So, and then you have authentication and OAuth server and all that kind of stuff already pre-set up. So with the OAuth apps here, users, it failed to retrieve them. There's something going on. Maybe the account is still provisioning, but I think we're fine on that. Should be enough for demoing. Sometimes when you create a new project like I just did, it can take a couple of minutes. Now you can see you have your OAuth settings, so we can go on, OAuth enable stuff. So there's so much that we can do. It's really cool. But there you go. We also have authentication here. So we have notifications, emails. We can set those things up, policies, users. So we got everything really nicely set up here. So now, while I did give you a little bit of a walkthrough of Supabase, we can now go to cursor and we'll just allow all the commands here. And we'll see what it will be doing and how it will look. It's still finishing up some of the parts here. And then let's just open the console here so for better debugging. So now it's still working on everything and setting everything up nice and clean. So we're just going to wait till this is done. And now, as you can see, this should do the trick. And now let's say that we need to integrate with Supabase, and let's set that up. So let's tell it, connect with Supabase using the MCP. Take a look at that. And then we can also refresh the application inside of here, and as you can see, we now have a sign-in, and we have an entire login for our application. And if we don't like certain things, we can always hover over them to then fine-tune them with the help of AI. So let's always allow those tools to be called and always allow those. So it can now actually access our account, as you can see, which is beautiful, works great. And cursor. Now it's setting up Supabase, and it's setting up everything that it needs on the TypeScript files for the backend and then all the other front-end code. So now we have this login. Now it's going to, we just always do allow list for those tools. So now it will set up the entire login process for us. So we have a real application with user login and all that kind of stuff. Isn't that incredible? So now inside of here, this is really getting crazy. This will just do the entire job for us. Now, what we also want, I also want to do login with Google. So we'll do this once the entirety of the thing works. But this is amazing. You could just build a full stack application under an hour using real local developer friendly tools. And you're not going to have a bunch of spaghetti code made by abstracted AI tools. Even though I think Lovable is the best of the browser ones. If you have to use the one that's in the browser, use Lovable. The other ones, they're like crap. I don't like Base 44, terrible. Bold, I think Bold is also good. Like I would say Lovable and Bold are the only ones I would use in the browser. The other ones, they're like toys. They're not even worth looking into, I would say. And WeWeb. WeWeb is also good. WeWeb for a different audience though. WeWeb is good for a different audience. So my top 3 ones like would be Lovable, Bold, WeWeb, everything else really not suggesting. Then just use Cursor, right? It's going to be way less prone to errors and way cheaper as well. So now Supabase is integrated. How simple is that, right? Look at this. While the UI is not having a Supabase icon here, it's still very simple. So this should be it. Now Supabase is enabled on your project. Make sure Supabase is off. The authentication should work out of the box with the default settings. Let's try this out. Let's go to our local page. Let's reload it. Let's try signing in. Let's do hey@despia.com and password hello 123. Let's just sign up actually. And let's do Despia CEO. Well, there you go. Let's go on inspect elements here. And we'll look at the network tab to see if those requests are successful. Let's sign up. No way it's successful. No way. This is amazing. Like, I'm logged in. I'm loading the data. Protected page. This is insane. Like, this was made with local tools, and it actually really looks decent, and it's mobile responsive. Like, if you go in here, inspect, like, mind blown. Absolutely mind blown. This is exciting. Like, it's a full application. What? Now, I want to do one thing. I want to really go bougie here. Let's go to Google Cloud Console. And let's set up login with Google, which I think will be incredibly easy. Let's see. Okay, let's go to my console. I have too many cloud projects. I actually got an email from Google telling me that I have too many cloud projects. I need to start deleting them because I have too many. So let's recycle an existing one. Okay, let's go to this one, no name. I think that's good. Go to APIs and services. So you are in Google Cloud Console now, right? And you go to Google Cloud, you create a project or select an existing one. You can create one. I can't create them anymore. Actually, oh, my resets reset it. Okay, so forget everything I just mentioned. You go back to Google Cloud Console. So you go back to Google Cloud Console. You'll click on here, create a new project. Let's call it video app here. Let's create the project. And now we're going to provision the project. And then we're going to set up login with Google, which is like something every app should have. Like if you don't have login with Google, what's wrong with you? Let's select the project. And it's incredibly simple. It's even simpler than doing it in Base 44. It's so simple nowadays. You go on the menu here. You go on APIs and services. You go to OAuth consent screen. OAuth consent screen. API services, OAuth consent screen. Right? Like it's so fast. Takes a minute to set it up. You then go on branding, and you go on get started. Okay, now you put your app name in here. Let's just do Despia. Support email. Next, it will be external because people will be logging in. Email address hey@despia.com. Let's go on next. Let's create. There you go. And now we have registered our application with Google for login with Google. It's so simple. Okay, and then we go to clients because now we need to create a client. Let's click on plus, create client here. Very simple. Okay. And then we will just select web application. We'll call this Supabase. And now I'm going to add the authorized redirect URIs. Now, where the heck do I get that? We now go into Supabase, we go into authentication, and now we go to OAuth apps. And now we need to configure the OAuth server settings. So let's click on here, OAuth server settings. We'll enable this, right? And then OAuth consent, save changes. Oh, they changed their interface. I hope this correct one because it says beta. That scares me a little bit. Configure your app to act as an identity provider for third-party applications. I don't think that's what we need. OAuth apps. I don't think, no. I think sign-in providers. Oh, I'm thinking too technical here, right? Because I remember like years ago, the sign-in providers were called OAuth, but they're OAuth apps. It's like if your app is an OAuth identity, so forget what I just mentioned. You go on sign-in and providers, and you go to third-party auth, you add a provider, and you should be able to add Google, right? Firebase, no, that's not it. Supabase auth, that's where it is. Okay, I haven't used Supabase for a while, so I do apologize for having to figure this out. So you go on sign in, I apologize. User signups, you allow user signups, and then we go a little bit down here. We can add phone, Web3, all that weird stuff, but we're just going to go to Google here. We'll click on Google. We'll enable login with Google. And now you see you have your callback URL. You see this callback URL down here on your thing? Copy that callback URL, go back into the Google Cloud Console, go to authorized URIs, add a URI and paste this link inside of here. Go on create. Will take a little bit. And now you get the client ID, right? Copy the client ID. And then in Supabase, paste the client ID inside of here. You get the client secret, go back into Google Cloud, copy the client secret here, go back to Supabase, paste the client secret inside of here. And now we're going to save this. Not now. And now we have a successfully enabled login with Google. So now, this was it. That's all you need. Now we go into Cursor and we say add login with Google. And now it will do this with the Supabase MCP because it will see that we already have this configured in our Supabase account, which is incredible that this even works. Like years ago, it would be unimaginable to build stuff like this. So let's put this on the allow list. As you can see, now it's going to set this up and we'll be able to then try login with Google in our application. How incredible is that? And then we're going to deploy everything one last time. We'll push an update, which will then trigger a new build on Netlify, which will then update what we've done locally on our machine here. So now it's setting all of that logic up to allow login and sign in with Google. You can add other providers, Microsoft. It's really simple. Like, people always think Cursor has a steep learning curve. I think in many scenarios, it's easier building it in Cursor than all of the other ones because it doesn't have the abstraction that the other ones are adding it. The other ones are trying to make it simpler for low-level users, but then once you're a high-level user, you got to fight with the limitations that have been implemented to make it easier for low-level users, right? Now, everybody has to start somewhere. I'm not saying low-level users are not worth having great tools, but, you always have to decide, is this something that you need right now? And it could be for many people that, Lovable or Bold or even Base 44 is what works for them right now. I'm not in the position to judge about that, but if you are feeling stuck with tools like Base 44, Lovable, you're reaching the context limits, local development is a good solution and probably a really good alternative for many people because it gives you really all of that flexibility while still having the ability to build applications essentially without knowing anything about building applications. Let's sign up with Google here. And as you can see now, login with Google is 150% working. It's so simple. It really feels crazy. Look at this. We're now logged in with the Google account. So now that everything is working in our application, we got to deploy the application. Let's say deploy update to GitHub. Now, deploying this update to GitHub will trigger our pipeline. right? Because we now have a continuous development pipeline, a CI/CD pipeline. The CI/CD pipeline will allow us to now push an update to GitHub. But because Netlify is linked with GitHub, pushing this update on GitHub will then trigger a new build, a new update in Netlify, which will then deploy a new version of the application to the link or the custom domain where our application is hosted, right? So now, as you can see, it's pushing this to GitHub, so we don't have to worry about losing code. Now, if we take a look at Netlify and just refresh the page, we should see that there's now a new deployment in Netlify, and it actually failed. Your plan only allows one contributor on private repos. Okay, let's manage the GitHub contribution, people. Edit settings. Let's just remove this one, and let's connect. So this is just because I'm doing many videos under many accounts. I need to link this one more time. So you won't have that issue. Yours would have already succeeded. But let's go back to projects. Let's go back to this application. And now I'm just going to do one thing. I'm going to go into this build and I'm going to go on retry with latest branch commit. And now it is starting up, as you can see, which we should have now the correct GitHub contributor linked to the account. So it's starting up. We can track the deployment that runs on a virtual computer, essentially. Inside of here, we can also play a game while we're on it, like a little puzzle. That's cute. Look at those cute things. I think we got... Now, where is it? Ah, look at that. Oh, I think we had him up here. Oh. No. Hey! Okay. And now also our build is working. So it's now building. Netlify's robots are busy building and deploying your application. So there you go. And now this build failed. Why did it fail? Let's see with their AI why this is failing. Building. Netlify. Let's see. Why do we get build errors? Missing. You can't isolate any command lines. Okay. Let's copy this error analysis that they give us. And let's go into cursor and let's say the build failed on Netlify. And I'm going to paste this inside of here. And let's say fix it and redeploy to GitHub. Okay. Which then deploying to GitHub will update this. Now, this is a simple setup to get a basic MVP going. You probably want to have branching, you probably want to have version control, all that kind of stuff. But in my opinion, and it's a very hot take, and I assume I'm going to get some hate comments for that, and some shitstorm, which is fine. You don't have to worry about branching, all that kind of stuff really too early down the process yet. I would just worry about first getting an MVP out there, and then you can always create a branch in GitHub and start version controlling, which is my opinion. But you don't need to go with all the fancy best practice setups while you're building an application that you don't even know if it will be having any users, right? Once you have users, it's still not really necessary. Once you have users that pay, and, you know, kind of like your income depends on the application, that's probably a good time to start version controlling stuff. I think it's a good measurement, right? You don't need to do too crazy stuff, but you can always implement it. It's simple nowadays with AI, but you don't have to overdo it. Like with AI code review for an application that doesn't even have any users and you're not even using it yourself. Like there's so many tools that you can now purchase and plug in that review your code and like do all that fancy stuff, and you don't need it if you don't have any users, right? So I just push to production while I'm building an application and I don't even know if it will have any users. But it's now published here. And as you can see, we now have the new version on the hosted link, which could also be our custom domain. We can sign in here, log in with Google Works. We got a full stack application going on here. Look at that. It does still redirect to localhost 3000 though. So we need to fix that. Okay, let's copy that. Let's go into cursor. Let's say the live app redirects to localhost when doing login with Google. Make it adapt dynamically to the current host name, which is essentially saying that if it's in localhost, use localhost. If it's not in localhost, take whatever the current custom domain is. Because right now it's just going to localhost, which we shouldn't go to localhost for login. While it's good that it's going somewhere and the login works, we're stuck at localhost here. So let's go back. And now Cursor will be fixing the issue here for us. And I probably think I've probably mentioned lovable a couple of times when I meant to say Cursor, so just it's muscle memory of my mouth saying lovable in all the videos. But whenever I said lovable, I meant Cursor. So we'll see what's going on here and how this is being set up. Okay. Removing redirect to from the Squarespace client, so only be the OAuth sign-in option. Okay, it seems like it's doing some valid changes here. So we'll see what's going on with this application that we're now building here. Let's see. Planning the next moves. And it looks beautiful. It looks, I don't know why, it looks kind of like better than some of the other UI that those AI builders are doing on the web. It looks really sleek, even though they all use the same theming library. I don't know, it looks a little bit more high-end. I don't know why. But let's see. Now this should be fixed. So push to GitHub. So it seemed like Netlify will be now rebuilding the version. Let's see. Yeah, it's now building a new version, which will take like 10 seconds. It's rather quick. It was published, so let's try the new version out here. As you can see, let's sign in, continue with Google, log into our Google account, continue. It still goes to localhost. Let's stay. Still goes to on the deployed version. Let's see. I think it has to do with actually how Subase works, because it probably thinks it's in a test environment. So now it fixed this, so let's take a look at this. Now, there is an optional thing that it recommends, and that's take your Netlify project URL, copy it, and give it to me, right? So it can just know if it's in localhost or not, and then correctly, redirect to the proper part of the applications. Keep in mind, when you have a custom domain, you want this to be your custom domain. But let's just set this up so it works, and it works how it should work, because that's really what you're really supposed to do when setting up those OAuth handshakes. So now it's going to set this up, and we'll take a look at this. Will take a little bit. And now it's deploying it. So we'll see if this now works in the live version. But very pleasant experience working with those tools, because they are not opinionated and you are not really seeing your credits fade away in front of your eyes. And if you use different IDEs, you can bring in Cloud Code to get way better rates when building with AI. But I think you already get better rates like just by using Cursor alone. So really cool stuff. And it's going to make development very simple. So go to user-based dev, select authentication URL, add, there is no redirect URL section. Set Netlify environment variable. It redirects. Actually, it may be right. It may be right. Let's copy this one here. Let's go to Subase. Let's go to its login with Google. And yes, you can see login with Google. Let's scroll up here. Third party auth, no. Allow manual linking, no, this should be all fine. So it should be all correct. Let's reload this again. Okay, this was just pushed. Let's try this out. Fingers crossed it works. Okay, let's try this again. Try this, let's go and continue. No, it still goes here. It still goes here. It needs to set this up on the front end. Let's say I cannot set this up in Supabase as you will need to set up the redirect URL when you call the Supabase login flow on the front end. Still goes to, and then we'll put the link with the current setup. Okay, let's send this here. Okay, and now we have this all going on here, which the problem is it kind of like, I don't think it defines the redirect URI on the front end, which will then always have a default redirect to, ensuring the redirect URI is passed correctly. I think it's for some reason ignoring the parameter, or we're not setting it correctly. Let's see. Ensuring the redirect URI is correctly passed and verified, Supabase may be falling back to a default, updating the code to force the redirect URI and handle the fallback correctly. Let's take a look at that. Supabase must whitelist the redirect URL. And now it's calling the tools with the MCP to set those things up for us in the Supabase dashboard. So we'll see. Okay, redirect URI must be whitelisted in Supabase for security. So let's allow this. Now it has to whitelist this, apparently. I did not know that we have to do that. But it can do this actually for us because of the MCP, which is a very nice integration. So now it's running the MCP tool, and it will see if it's whitelisted. Let's take a look at this. I think we can also do wildcards, though. I think Lovable doesn't have that issue because you host with Lovable, right? And they already whitelist your Lovable URLs, so it's not too big of a problem. Supabase requires URLs to be whitelisted. The code already passes the dynamic URL, creating the guide to whitelist this. Okay, I think there may be some manual work we need to do to whitelist them. We'll take a look at this, and then we'll do the steps that are needed to set this up correctly. Supabase requires URLs to be whitelisted for security. The redirect URL is correctly passed on the code. The issue is that it isn't whitelisted in Supabase. See, okay, it's now doing lots of thinking. Let's just have it think for a moment, and then when it's done, we'll take a look at what the next steps are. So now it analyzed the problem, and here's what's going on. The code is correct. It detects the hostname and passes the redirect URL via redirect to. What's happening? The code detects this. Code passes it to Supabase correctly. The fix is that there is a fallback that needs to be set up. Go to Supabase, select your project, authentication, URL configuration, and then copy this. Okay, we need to have those schemas in here. Authentication URL configuration. Okay, so we go to authentication and we should have URL configuration. Okay, yes, redirect URLs. Okay, let's add a URL here. I think we need to just put this one in here. That'll do, like everything like with wildcards that is hosted on Netlify. Then you would also ultimately paste your custom URL in here, like https://myapp.com/ and then you do **, something like this. You would save your URLs. right? And then they're added, and then site URL, configure the default redirect, and that's the default, right? That is a local host as a default. So it's falling back to that default because those are not registered. So we do not actually need to rebuild anything. We can just open the application again. Site was paused, it reached its usage limits. Oh shit. I do have to upgrade my Netlify account, as it seems. Project has been paused. Okay, so what do I do? Upgrade team. Okay. Okay, switch to personal. Let's do this. And I guess I'll be paying for this now. So now I upgraded from $9 to the personal plan, and we have now, I think, 1,000 builds or something, 1,000 build credits. I think that's good. The application is now building, so let's keep refreshing. And this should now work because we have it now whitelisted with, with Sylvase. So now the login should work. So let's see. It's still building. We can track the build inside of here. Pretty cool is deploying it on a virtual computer to building the application. Same as Despia does, but for iOS applications on way more expensive compute. There you go. It's still building. It takes a little bit. Maybe there's like a laziness fee in terms of timing being added to it if you just upgrade it. We'll see. It will probably take a little bit to deploy because we just upgraded. We may need to fire it off one more time. So let's go to cursor and let's say added deploy to GitHub one more time, just to fire it off one more time, right? So to get it all synced up. But let's see, because I think maybe it kind of like stopped in the middle, and then now we have kind of like a pending build. We can just cancel the deployment, actually. Let's go to deploys. Yeah, we just canceled that. So now it deployed it to GitHub, so we should be able to reload the page, and we should see a new build here. No, wasn't added. Let's see. Deploy with new deploy again to GitHub. I just wanted to deploy again to just push a new build out. We could also manually actually trigger a new build. Yeah, we should. Actually would be smarter, but I think we're fine. We'll just do a new deployment. Trigger deploy, because we can just deploy the project right here manually without having to push another one. That's actually an ineffective way of doing it, because we just need to get this resolved. Oh, actually, it is resolved because we paid. So we actually don't need to rebuild because nothing changed on the project. It changed on Sylvase, which is remotely loaded into the project. Because of, where's my backend explanation? Oh, I think it's gone. No, it's just my backend explanation here. And let's take a look at this. Let's sign in. Continue with Google. Fingers crossed. This works. Ooh, and we're in, and it works. And we just built an entire application using local development tools, real code. It's deployed on Netlify. It works. We have added login with Google, social authentication, normal login, logout. We got it responsive. We got gated pages, all that kind of stuff. And now you can go into Lovable and you can keep chatting with it. And that's how you get in your first local deployment. Not Lovable, cursor, shit. That's how you set up your first cursor application. And now I'm going back to making Lovable videos. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and have a good one. Bye-bye.